welcome to the Irresistible Marketing Pod, the podcast that wants you to stop internalizing imposter syndrome and start questioning whether the system that has you feeling like an imposter was built to keep you out in the first place. Over here, we support a screw a seat at your table, we're building our own sort of attitude. And changing systems from within, we support that too. Anyway, I'm your host, Isa Gauchi, your marketing confidence cheerleader and owner of the Emisa Messaging digital marketing agency for small business baddies. In this episode, I have a delightful chat with writer Ellee Thalheimer about how she taps into her inner Chad to boost her confidence in situations where she feels like an outsider. I loved this hilarious approach so much, I just had to share it with all of you. Here is our chat.
I'm Ellee Thalheimer. I am a freelance writer, mostly a travel adventure writer in Portland, Oregon.
Yes, and wildly productive. You've created several of your own books. We recently met at an event here in Portland called Greet and Grow, and at Ellie's booth, she had like just take books I wrote just kind of casually, and I knew we were going to be friends because like when people were kind of streaming in, and I think we were being advanced upon by like some men in suits, if I remember correctly. And Ellie looked at me and she goes, at times like this, I call on my inner Chad. And I just looked at her and started laughing. And I was like, you're like your inner mediocre white man. And she was like, yeah, kind of. I just didn't want to say just in case. Which made me laugh so hard. And so we wound up getting coffee later after that event and talking about Ellie's extraordinary journey as a business owner and her extraordinary confidence to be able to be a travel writer during COVID and a business owner during COVID, and how using her inner Chad as a tool has helped her do all this cool stuff. So Ellie, how did you get in touch with your inner Chad?
Well, I think the pandemic really did a number on me and my family. And as you can imagine, the travel writing industry kind of faltered. So after my youngest son went to kindergarten, I relaunched my business, and I was feeling a little bit tentative. I didn't know what the market was like. Everything had gotten scrambled with the pandemic. I didn't know. And I was simultaneously relaunching my freelance writing business and also trying to sell my novel. And what that meant was I had to do a lot of hustling, and I had to do a lot of self-promotion, and I had to just ask for people to give me things a lot, or just give me a chance, give me a moment, give me a coffee date, and there was this internal barrier to doing that at first. The little voice inside myself that said, who are you to ask this person for a favor? Who are you that people will want to hear what you have to say? Who are you to stand up and say you're a novelist? And I didn't really appreciate that voice. Like, I don't know. So a tool that I just came up with was my inner Chad. So my inner mediocre white guy who walks into the room. Of course you want to give him attention. Of course you want to help him. Of course you want to give him space and let him talk for a really long time. That guy. And so I thought about, what would Chad do? What would Chad do? And then I just went with it. And it's opened up, opportunities for me, frankly.
So internally, like it flipped a switch for you where like you weren't giving yourself permission to like ask for the coffee date or introduce yourself as a novelist. And you're like, Chad would just be like, of course I'm a novelist. Or Chad would just be like, Of course that person wants to have coffee with me.
Yes.
That's
Yeah. Because it's not like I would know what I needed to do. Like, this is what I need to do. And then there is, whenever I felt like that sinking feeling of stopping myself from doing what I knew I needed to do, or like that tentativeness, is when I called upon Chad to step forward and help me out. And I just channeled him.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you kind of got in touch with your inner Chad when you were relaunching a lot of stuff. So it sounds like you already had experience as a writer. You already had experience as with running a travel writing business beforehand. What was it like doing that before you had Chad as a tool?
I really just think that was a different world, really, because I was just, eh, I felt pretty confident back then. I had a fair number of um, just connect. I was really in the industry and connected, and I had um, kind of some momentum going. And then I had kids, and that's really when the momentum stopped. So I didn't feel like before Chad um, and before kids, it was, I ran up. Well, I guess I did. I ran up against it a little bit. I really leaned heavily into an organization. And I think that probably with the people who listen to this podcast, I hope they have an organization, like a networking organization like I did. It was called the Portland Society. And so it was a group of professional women who were passionate about cycling. And they owned businesses, they were professionals, they were freelancers, and we got together every month and listened to speakers and went to boot camps. And that lasted for about 10 years. It's no longer out there anymore. It kind of died with the pandemic, but it was very much old school Portland kind of organization. But I leaned pretty heavily on that and into that support. So that was helpful for me back then. It was really, I really had to, Chad became a tool as in this brave new world that I stepped into when I felt like I had less footing and less of an idea of what was going on, as I'd been down like a desperate black hole of nothingness during the pandemic.
I actually think that's such an important part of your story that you bring up that so many people, including myself, can relate to. Like, before I opened my business and I was coming up in my career and like launching a marketing agency for someone else, I had like a lot of industry connections. I had people that were mentoring me. I had people that were opening doors for me and like inviting me places and like literally externally giving me permission and opening doors. And then it's so different when that context is gone and you're like, wait, who's opening doors for me? Who's giving me permission? Like what are like the rungs of the corporate ladder I go through? Like, where's the org chart when it's just me? Like, where's the org chart in COVID? And especially if you are someone socialized as a woman or someone who's like not conditioned to assume everyone wants to give you opportunities or everyone cares what you have to say or everyone thinks you're professionally qualified and interesting, to just be like, wait, what? So it's so cool that you kind of immediately, when that self-doubt started creeping in, had that awareness to be like, I don't think if I were a Chad, I would be worried about this.
Yeah, I mean, because in my experience, I've seen Chad. I've seen Chad flourish and thrive and go up the ladder, and I'm just like, what is going on? What is going on? And I've liked a little bit of, but you can only have tincture of Chad. You can't have full Monty Chad. You've got to have tincture, little drops of Chad, because ultimately there's a lot to learn from Chad. He's at the top of the pyramid. and we want to learn from the ways that Chad is successful, but also we can't take too much Chad because we don't want to be dicks, you know? You know, and it's probably pretty lonely up there at the top of the pyramid and hard to connect with others, and ultimately very lonely when everything is about you. So just tincture of Chad. Drop, drop, drop.
Tincture of Chad. Yes, I love that so much. Like, it was funny, when we were at coffee, we were joking. I was like, I want you and Chad to come on the podcast to talk about this as a tool. But even in the language, we're like talking about Chad as the tool. Like, you're not in Chad 24/7, because like we're kind of resentful of Chad. We're resentful of the 24/7 Chads. Man.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Many parts about Chad, but we can celebrate the parts of Chad that do work, especially for us, you know. Thanks, Chad. Thanks,
Chad. And then also like use the boost of the tincture of Chad to like use that power to make it better for like the people we're paving the way from, for our own communities, and like to like give each other a lift. And so that also leads into, you mentioned something that I think is so important for entrepreneurs, which was you had this really amazing cycling community. So because you've been so independent, it sounds like for quite a while as a writer, as your own business owner, one of my questions I sent you in our pre-interview package was like, were you emotionally supported by the people around you when you're like, I'm going to be my own boss, I'm going to go into business by myself? What were people's reactions when you're like, I'm Ellie, I'm my own boss, or when you made that decision? How did that come about?
I feel very lucky to like that community. The Portland Society community was very supportive. Of course, there's like, where I'm from pretty much would think whatever I did was ridiculous. So that was a consistent and continues to be a consistent. So that's, you know, just like an undercurrent. But the Portland Society was really supportive, and also my partners were really supportive of me doing that. He is truly generous in his support of me. So I feel really lucky. I know a lot of other folks come up against lots of barriers going forward.
Have you ever leaned on Chad or other sources when you encounter pushback for people like the naysayers or the doubters about like, you're running your business in a pandemic, or like you can be your own boss? Like,
just to clarify, I did not run a business through the pandemic. I like relaunched it afterwards. Everything went into the garbage.
Okay. So still impressive, because
thank you. I'll take that. Chad would say, yes, girl, it is impressive. Yes, I am. I am.
Yes. I mean, running a business at any time, any context, anywhere is impressive. But I know particularly being in the travel writing industry post-pandemic has been, it's a specific thing for sure. But when you run into naysayers about your line of work or being your own boss or having a business, do you lean on Chad or other tools to like bolster your confidence and following your own path?
It's interesting. Like there occasionally is like, in the past has been an editor who pushes boundaries or is like disrespectful of my time, or, you know, in the past there's been like applying for grants and just like misogyny and stuff like that. I've definitely like experienced things like that, but really the biggest barriers that I've found and the biggest pushback that I get is inside of myself, and believing the cultural standards that are all around us, and tell people that they can't, or they shouldn't, or to be quiet, or they're not good enough. So those sort of internalized, that internalized psychology is what I fight most against. And chat is a good tool, and there's a lot. I mean, it's been a work in progress. You have to come at it from all angles, I think, to deprogram yourself from this culture.
That is so funny you say that. I've been working with, well, I am my first client, but also my marketing confidence cheerleading clients. And we'll talk a little bit about the naysayers and the doubts. And then sometimes I'll get into, so who says that to you? And they'll be like, wait, I don't think anyone actually said that to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, so you're saying that to you. Okay.
But you see, and that's where Chad comes in, because he doesn't say that to himself. He doesn't experience that voice. That voice is not inside of him. So it's just like a stretch of imagination. What would happen if this voice wasn't here? What would happen? What could happen? And you basically, it's just a tool of expansiveness, of imagination.
It is. I think like we were joking it, and it had us roaring. Like we were literally in a coffee shop echo, because I invited you on the podcast, and you're like, sure, Chad will come host it for you.
Yeah, he'll be like, that's great. You want to run it? That's really cute. You want to run your own little podcast? Let me run it. I'm just going to take over, and I'll start asking you questions. No, wait, I'll just talk.
Chad will come man spread all over it, give you some tips. And we're just laughing. And like Chad was like, of course you want me on your podcast. I'd be happy to. But it was really funny though, because like it changed the energy. And I'm imagining like if you're someone who like I actually have had people I've invited on the podcast, and they are terrified. They're like, I don't know if I can do it. I'm going to get so anxious. Like, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I make people mad? Like it like really comes up with like an anxiety block or something similar, like being invited on a podcast, and they're like, it's bringing up all these fears. So I'm wondering what would happen if you asked like, okay, so what if you were Chad? How would he feel about being invited on the podcast? And then if you literally just start making it funny, like him like being like, sure, I'll host it for you. Like, how does that change your own internal energy? And then and if you start laughing about it, does that open up like some space for you to be like, okay, how have I been uninviting myself?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. It does. And I think that the levity is really nice too. Because, you know, we laugh instead of cry. It's so much better.
Yeah, we laugh instead of cry. And then also I've been so I've got this program. I'm thinking a lot about the body and how like emotions manifest in the body right now, just because of this program, Marketing Witchery Week, I'm teaching next week. And I'm thinking about like that one person that was so anxious about like coming and talking on a podcast and having people hear them and maybe saying the wrong thing, and like just describing it. Like, I don't know if you can, I know y'all listening can't see us, but like just describing this, I feel like my shoulders hunch, my jaw get tight, and I just get like kind of tighter and like more coiled. And then I started talking about how Ellie and I started laughing about Chad hosting my podcast for me. And I'm like leaning back and like swiveling in my swivel chair. My arms are open. And then like the energy like totally changes. And then like when I start talking about laughing, Ellie herself starts laughing. So it's not just my energy changing, it's the other person I'm in conversation with. And it's just interesting. Sorry to go on a woo-woo tangent.
We like woo-woo. Yeah, it's true. And you can look at Chad as a force of evil, or you could look at him as a force of good. And I prefer to look at him as a source of inspiration. And also it's kind of fun to laugh at him a little bit. Just laugh at him a little bit.
Take him.
Yeah, I'm interested. You do so much great work with your clients, And I'm interested to see if this is a tool that will, this is just something that I like pulled right out of my, and it's interesting if that could like become a tool for others to see if they jive with Chad, or it could be Tad, or it could be, I don't know, Todd.
Okay, so before I forget, we'll put Ellie's and my socials, of course, in the show notes. But if you use Chad, or however you want to name your inner man spreader, if you use them as a tool to go after professional opportunities or feel better about ones you're nervous about, can you post about it and tag us? Because we'd love to hear about it. So tag me. I'm at Marketing Confidence Cheerleader on Instagram and at Confidence Cheerleader on TikTok. And Ellie, if you want to shout out yours, though, of course, these will both be in the show notes as well.
I'm on Instagram, and Chad is largely in charge of my Instagram, by the way. And that's at PNW_hedonism. And that's all I have.
Awesome.
I haven't joined the masses of young folk on the TikToks. Or the next thing. I don't know. What is the next thing? You should tell me. What's the next thing past TikTok?
I don't know. I'm not young.
Hey, but if you ever talk to someone who is young, ask them and then tell me. It'll like go up through the information will percolate through the generations.
If you are a youth, please explain the socials to us. Tag us. Okay. So Ellie, I'm wondering if do you have any examples of like specific ways you've utilized Chad? I was curious, you mentioned like I don't know if you're comfortable going into this, but how does Chad respond when you encounter misogyny, either externally or internalized misogyny?
Well, let's see. I have really good, it's kind of like oblique to your question a little bit, but I have some good concrete examples of how Chad has participated in me having like opening up opportunities for myself. Would that be an appropriate way to answer that question?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking for representation for my novel, and you have to sell yourself, and you have to reach out to people in the industry, and everyone that I know, I'm reaching out and asking for meetings, and I'm asking to connect. And how I've really used Chad is they're just asking for blurbs. Like I reconnected with an old professor who is a published author, and I asked for a blurb for my novel. And it's like, oh, I don't want to bother her. Oh, she probably is doing so many important things, and and just interrupting. Chad's really good at interrupting in real life and in my head. So Chad interrupts, and then he's like, no, this person wants the opportunity to help a emerging writer. This person has made it in certain ways and might be open to, and you will never know, you will never get a yes if you don't ask the question. The answer will always be no if you don't ask the question. So in getting these meetings with like book publicists and people who know people in the press, in certain academic presses, I've been reaching out and just asking when my normal inclination would be, oh, I don't want to bother them. Oh, that is too much to ask. That is too much to ask for just me. And so he's really helped in that context. He's helped with my hustle.
Wait, can I just pause and say, like, of course,
okay, sorry.
I'm not worried about being a bother. Chad is like, of course I'm not a bother. I'm a blessing.
Yeah, he's like, good for you that you get to interact with me. This is great for you. This is really great for you.
Chad is not worried about bothering anybody.
No. He's like, you're welcome. You're welcome.
You're welcome. I've just made your day.
Yes.
Or possibly your entire life.
He's like, good for you. You know, he would probably say, great for you to connect with me because I'm going to be famous really soon. And then I'll like be able to be beneficent connection to you. You're welcome. You're welcome in advance.
Yes. And if I could just like highlight this for my people, because one thing a lot of my marketing confidence cheerleader people struggle with is making a repeat ask in marketing, which is actually something you have to get comfortable with, especially in a launch. You can't just say something one time in your marketing and be like, why aren't I sold out? You have to get comfortable repeating yourself and repeating offers. And then also, for something like testimonials, or like you're sending a direct message to like a super aligned client and you're like, this is a perfect alignment, and you haven't heard back in a week. And then so many people just let that go. And I'm like, oh, the times where I've made that sale, or I've gotten the most glowing rave review ever when I sent 1 or 2 follow-ups. Like, you are just letting those fly out the window because you don't want to bother them when
absolutely,
you know,
absolutely. And I have used Chad for that too. The follow-ups for work, for you know, when I haven't heard from an editor, but we had chatted about some work, I follow up and then I follow up. You can't like sit there and expect an embossed invitation. You know, you have to like keep on going for it, because I think it's about having confidence in what you have to offer. Like, yes, like no one's going to be mad at you for offering this really great thing. And it's just like when you're talking about having your clients repeat things and just remind people. First of all, people need reminders all the time. And then second of all, I find that when, you know, when I find myself in that situation, I think of it, and especially this was selling books too, when I used to sell books, it was so much easier to think about when you ping people, like you're giving them an opportunity. You are giving them you're not trying to sell something, you're giving them an opportunity to have this thing that would help them, or that would, and you're trying to like elbow into the space of their busy lives to give them this thing that will benefit them. So I feel like that kind of reframing can help a lot when you're just like pitching into the darkness, you know?
Yeah, great time for Tincture of Chad, where like I'm not bothering. I mean, like it's one thing if you harass someone, but if it's like 1 or 2 follow-ups, or like if it's in your own marketing, repeat your offer as much as you want. Like you can say whatever you want in your own space as many times as you need to, and you're not bothering anyone because they can unfollow or opt out. But if you're just like doing 1 or 2 follow-ups with someone who's like already engaged with you, that is a great time. Both of these instances, great time for Tincture of Chad to be like, I'm sure the only reason they haven't bought it yet or taken me up on my offer is because they just got a catastrophic phone call and couldn't take me up on my offer the first time they saw it. Or some other
they meant to, and they just were lifing, you know, and then everything's
yeah, and they're going to be so relieved I reminded them, and they're not going to miss on this incredible opportunity, and they'll be so thankful that here I am again reminding me of this thing they would be absolutely devastated if they missed out on. Great time for Tincture of Chad.
Yeah, and you're welcome. And you're welcome. And you're welcome. Isn't that like a Disney song?
Yeah. Okay, well, I interrupted. You were going to give me another instance when you've leaned into Chad for an opportunity you might not have otherwise gone after.
Let's see. I channeled Chad. Chad is good even in just like day-to-day interactions, because people, I feel like Chad takes up space. He takes up space. he doesn't like, it's kind of easy to ask people questions because people love to talk about themselves. And people, it's rarely have the skill set to ask other people questions. And that's just how our culture is, mostly. But when I find myself in conversation and people will say, "Oh, how are things going?" I will say, "I'm relaunching my business. This is what I'm doing, and this is how it's going." And I just get the word out. And even if this person that I'm talking to is a nurse or a whatever, sometimes those conversations can lead to other opportunities. And it's like, in day to day, just like take up space and say your story and say it proudly. And that didn't always come easily for me. That is something I've worked on. Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Chad.
Oh, okay. So without Tincture of Chad, you might have just been like, "Oh, fine. How are you? Let's talk about you.
Oh, how is your business? How is your job?" Because people love talking about themselves, and I actually I'm really curious about people too. Like, I am just a person who likes to hear people's stories, but like sometimes it's time to take up space. I feel like so much of what I was taught when I was growing up was like, be as small as possible to give other people space. And it's time to take up space. Just Tincture of Chad though, right? Like, don't alienate, but like take up space. We deserve to be
my keynote.
What?
This dinner party is now my keynote address.
The soliloquy begins now.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Feel free to tip.
Somebody please take notes. Thanks.
You're going to want to write this down, honey.
Yeah.
Too far. Bring it in. Concentrate the Chad. Dilute the Chad.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Dilute the Chad. Other way.
Several drops under the tongue. It's good. It's good.
Follow with 3 nice glasses of water.
I used Chad to go to the event that I met you at.
Oh, well, because that's how we connected. Tell me about, because that was a networking, that was a stretch for me as well. Tell me what role Chad played for you at Greet and Grow.
So I just freshly relaunched my business, and I was looking for opportunities in the outdoor industry and came across Prosper Portland and then this event. And I'm like, I'm just relaunching. How can I be a part of this event? And then I just looked at the application and I was like, why don't I just apply? Just apply. I'm like, okay. And then they accepted me. And I was like, holy crap, I don't have any materials. I don't have anything ready. I haven't rebranded anything. I haven't thought about things, and I was just like, no, channel my Chat. And I just threw some shit together. Some shit together, got some writing samples, did a DBA from my publishing business and my content creation business name, which was Into Action Publications. And I was like, we're just changing it to Into Action Content going forward. And so I just plowed forward, made some materials and went there, and then made sure, and I was just like, no, we're just doing this. We're pushing this out. And I got to meet you, and I actually, a couple of other opportunities came up. And so it was good.
Yeah, that's so interesting you say that, because from an outside perspective, Ellee's booth looked like she had her shit together. She was just she'd written this really gorgeous guidebook. I think it was a brewery guidebook for cycling, and it was this gorgeous book, and there are other things, there are all these examples of her writing and her examples. So like, I never would have guessed she had any sort of confidence wobble, because I was like, this is a writer, man. This is a and so it's so interesting because so many of even my marketing confidence cheerleading clients are really accomplished people. They're really, really accomplished people, and they don't know it. Like, they don't know it. Like, and the way they don't know it is reflected in the way they price their stuff. It's reflected in pushing way too much stuff into their offers because they're feeling insecure. So they're like, I'm going to overwork myself, and then maybe I'll feel better about charging money for my work, even though it's already good. And so it's so important to find something that gets you to feel like it's enough. It's enough. I'm good enough. That you can stop sabotaging your business by undercharging and overworking. So if finding a Chad is the tool that works for you, yay, because we need something that lets you take up your space and go after your opportunities. All right, sorry.
That's what I really love about your approach in your marketing business, because you do approach it from inside out. And I think that is so completely essential for success, especially with the kind of clients that you're working with. And it's just, I don't know. And it makes me wonder, why is everyone not doing that? Like, is this, why is this so novel? This is where it's at.
You. I mean, I don't know why everyone isn't doing it, but I like my life.
We came together at that event because we both knew how brilliant each other was.
Yeah. Our inner Chads are like, bro.
Grow.
Yeah, and you said your Chad runs your social media. Tell me a little bit about that.
So in my particular line of work and where I want to go, I have to have a social, I don't have to, but it is very helpful to have a social media presence. And I don't want to. But I know I need to, because I want to be successful. And this is just, sometimes you got to put it on your big girl panties and go forward in life. And so, and I do also, I like it some, I like the connection and stuff, but it's just not it's not what I would naturally do. And I have to, like, part of what I need to do is share my work. And also I'm trying to share opinions about different books I read, which is kind of vulnerable, and kind of like shout out other businesses. And so I've got to do this stuff, and I'd rather just be quiet, but I can't. And so I kind of just let him take the reins, and he goes and he's like, hey, look what I wrote. Look at this. It's pretty good. It's about this interesting thing. Great.
I just made your whole life better. I just completely changed your life. You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, I mean, he's helpful. He's helpful for that. I feel like I sound a little bit like a psycho. I feel like what is a split personality? I don't know. He's helpful.
I don't think you sound like a psycho. I actually, I forget which podcast episode it was. I think it might have been one I recently did on like what it really took for my business to make it 2 years. And one of the things that, like, the thoughts has made it so I can actually keep going, especially in like the slump part, is practicing the belief that my thoughts are valuable to other people. And the reason that's important, as conceited as that sounds, is that well, first of all, a belief is just a thought that you think over and over and over again until it's habit. So cool thing about that is you can choose your beliefs, and you can just practice thoughts until they become beliefs, which is dope. And the reason I want that as a belief is because that makes me feel like content has purpose. And then when I have an idea that personally lights me up, then I'm like, okay, if it's lighting me up, then it'll light somebody else in my audience up. And so I'm choosing to believe if it's lighting me up, it's because someone else that's connected to me needs to hear it. Now we're in the future, which is also cool. So I'm practicing that my thoughts are valuable to other people. And so if I have a thought that lights me up, I have to share it because it's going to help somebody else. Otherwise, what's the point of content? You know? So,
you should make like a 365 page affirmation calendar with these things in it. So you can look at one every day.
Yeah, I really like that. I like that. But who does it hurt, right? Who does it hurt to think my thoughts are valuable to other people? Because then if you're like, if you're like, I'm sharing this because it's going to help somebody else, doesn't that like bring so much purpose, and like community and giving and generosity and like nurturing energy to your marketing, which makes it so much more like inviting anyway, which is what we want our marketing to do. We want it to be inviting and welcoming and attractive to people. So we need that belief first to make it attractive and welcoming and inviting and nurturing. And if we're just like, well, I'm just gonna throw some thoughts out there and I don't know if they matter and like blah 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 blah, that's kind of like putting emotional labor on whoever receives it to like tell us they're valuable first.
Right.
It was not as attractive.
I think that like partner to that concept is like, yeah, this is a really cool idea that lights me up, and also and it will help other people, but also like this is a really awesome thought, period. And it just holds merit, and it's its own ecosystem as just being brilliant in and of itself. You know what I mean? And just like that holds, and to have that kind of confidence in your ideas is something that I'm working towards. It's like as a writer and a novelist, like this holds. No one else may want to buy it, but I believe in this. This is something that and like writers, you can hear an artist over, you hear about journeys where people tell them no and no and no and no and no and no and no until they get finally a yes, but that the thing that kept them there was that just like integrated belief in this is great. So I think that paired with like this is great in and of itself, self-supporting, and then this will also be great for other people.
Yes. What if you feeling like this is great or knowing it's great is what makes it great?
Yeah, that's true.
Because like also I feel like when I get a creative download like that, it feels like almost holy to be woo-woo again, like a creative download like that just gets channeled like that, and it's this exciting idea that lights me up. It's almost like nature or something,
and you're plugging into something bigger.
And it's like art or nature or music or a sound, and you're right, it doesn't need anybody else or anyone else's reaction to be as amazing as it is, and yet still like it does tend to attract that sort of reaction. It doesn't need that, but because it is beautiful on its own, people notice.
It's like they're partners in crime. They're great partners in crime.
Yeah, but like you do need the belief to like, and the trust to be able to bring it into the world in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason you won't is if you get like, who am I to bring it into the world, or who am I in it, So we need that tincture of Chad to be
tincture of Chad, man. Because I mean, look what they, look what Chad brings into the world. You can do at least that good.
I mean, the tincture of Chad, though, because sometimes he brings not great stuff into the world, too.
Yeah. Couple drops under the tongue.
Then drink a glass of water. Dilute him.
Maybe it should be like made into naturopathic pills, those like little sugar pills. Less is more.
Yeah. I am curious, has Chad ever gotten you into any trouble?
He has not yet gotten me into trouble. I did, what did I say? Um, I thought, yeah. No, he hasn't gotten me into trouble yet. I think it's just because if you're so far swinging to the other side of Chad, that it's going to be really, I mean, to test the limits of Chad so much that you get in trouble because of it, is you're going to have to really swing very far. The best example is I used to live kind of nearby a famous author, and I didn't know him that well, but I knew his husband, and I emailed the husband to see if he would blurb my book. And that was kind of a super ballsy move that might make it awkward to see the husband like running around the neighborhood or whatever. But also he might just not care, you know? So it's like nowhere near trouble. Like, and I could just see him and whatever, the answer is no. And if you don't ask. And so he never got back to me. But that's okay. I just tried. And that's like, I don't know, it's very mild. That's not trouble. That's just like, I don't know. You try all of the different ways and then you hopefully will be eventually successful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I bet that'll be really reassuring for listeners to hear that, like, if you are not naturally a Chad, leaning on a tincture of Chad as the tool to go after opportunities you might psych yourself out of, hasn't gotten Ellie in trouble yet.
No, and I'm really leaning into it. So we'll see where it gets me. You know, I think that this, like, I see it all the time, this cultural value of modesty, which it just gets us in trouble because it's just horseshit. Modesty is it's like, it's just dishonesty. It's dishonesty that it's dishonesty that we start to believe because words have power. And we're like, oh no, you know, it's modesty is definitely different than humility. Humility is like a deeply held, you know, it's just who you are. But modesty is knowing you're awesome, but then saying something that like downplays yourself. And I feel like lots of times we do that because we think that's a virtue and we want to be virtuous, but really we box ourselves into something that ultimately is not useful for us.
Have you seen The Great?
I haven't. What is that?
I love it so much. It's a show on Hulu about, it's Catherine the Great. It's like a dark comedy and it's an occasionally true story, but it's really funny. There's like this exchange where she's calling herself Catherine the Great and someone's like, that's kind of conceited, and she's like, well, it would be if you weren't great.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
So has Chad helped you take credit for your awesomeness or your greatness?
You know what? I feel like I have been working on taking compliments. Just like take them. Yes, you're right. Yeah, agreed. And just like store them away for the winter months when everything's gray. You know? Yeah, I think that there's a certain grace that you can have when receiving compliments. And yeah, I guess channeling Chad has been good with that too. And you just say thank you and accept it. People have so much, I don't know, have you seen that with your clients? Like, people have a lot of trouble accepting compliments.
Yeah, I'm actually so glad you mentioned that. I have actually picked up a practice where I literally collect compliments.
Yeah.
I got this idea. I stole it from some podcast, but I call it a file of fabulous. And I started it when I was feeling like, when I first started my business and I was feeling like a little insecure about like the value of my work. And so I started handwriting every bit of positive feedback I got about my work into this notebook. And y'all on the podcast can't see it, but it's a wildflower notebook. So I like it because it's like a metaphor of like collecting my flowers. But I handwrite every bit of positive feedback about my work so that I have a record I can refer to about why my work is great and what it means to people. And there's something about handwriting it that makes it stick more. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to get more of my marketing confidence cheerleader clients, if they're feeling insecure about what their work means to people and the value of it, to start doing the same thing. Because I've noticed this thing where so many of them, well, they'll tell me in session, they'll tell me about some really beautiful positive feedback someone will have given them about their work, but they'll like zip over it like it's no big deal, or some major accomplishment they just made. And they'll just like mention it really offhand without even pausing, and then go straight to the problem or the challenge or the thing that's not working. And I'll be like, "Ooh, play that back." Let's highlight that. Let's acknowledge that. Why aren't we throwing a party for this? And I think it's so in our habit, especially if we have like any perfectionist tendencies. If we have any worthiness challenges with ourselves, to if growing up, if we want to go really deep, if we felt like we had to earn our worth by achievement, a lot of us are really in the habit of getting straight to the next thing after we achieve something or mark something, straight to the next thing, which is really hard to sustain long term. It's hard on your body, it's hard on your spirit, it's hard on your heart. And so I would really love for all entrepreneurs to start noticing when the good stuff happens, no matter how small. So if you want to steal this File of Fabulous collecting your flowers idea, please go for it.
I think that's a great idea. And then also, because everyone has good days and bad days, you always like pop it out on a bad day and just go back and reground yourself into reality instead of spinning out in your head.
Yeah, I actually make myself read it before I price anything, because pricing is still something I have a lot of emotional static around. So I have to read my File of Fabulous before I price anything. That's my personal practice.
I love that. That's a really good tool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Ellie, before I let you go, thank you and Chad, thank you for educating me on how to have a podcast. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your journey with the listeners. Is there any bit of advice you'd want to give people if they're feeling like they're self-sabotaging out of opportunities, or they're noticing in themselves like they need a Chad? Is there any words of encouragement you'd like to leave people with?
I would say, I know this really great marketing gal that can help you work on that from the inside out. Let me give you her email.
It's in the show notes, y'all.
Oh, I would say kind of that, like, lean on community and create your own community, and don't be afraid to get help. And that has been helpful for me, and it sounds like it's been helpful for you, Isa. And that's about it. Tincture of Chad twice a day, 3 drops under the tongue.
And stay hydrated.
And stay hydrated. Make sure at the end of every year to do a cleanse. Something preferably witchy, and make it.
All right, Ellie, how can the good people keep up with your work, read your fabulous writings, let them know where they can follow along, and oh yeah, and anything about your book if you want to let them know.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I would love any followers on Instagram to join the journey. I post my writing and various fun opportunities for things to do around Washington and Oregon mostly. And that's, again, PNW_hedonism. Thank you, Chad. And that's probably the best place to follow me. I have links to like my website and my portfolio from there, but I'm always open to freelance writing opportunities. My book, right now I'm in the process of trying to either find a small press or a literary agent. So that is my journey right now. And there's not much more I just have to keep on using my tincture of Chad and trying to reach out and sell it and do the good work. So, and hopefully I will sell it and I will post about it on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, Chad's gonna sell it for you, don't worry.
Right? I think he is. Oh my gosh, so handsome. He looks like a Ken doll.
All right, Ellie. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Keep on doing your great work. People are so lucky to have you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you got a lot out of it, make sure to follow Ellie and me and leave us a comment about your takeaways. Please let us know if you try out this tincture of Chad thing on something you've been feeling about imposter syndrome about in your own business. And as always, make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this episode. And if you could use more confidence boosting in your business, there are 3 ways you can work with me as your personal cheerleader. You can join the Squad, which is a fabulous community of excellently eccentric entrepreneurs doing the impossible in real time. You get access to mini marketing masterclasses, business labs where we work on your actual marketing assets and make sense of your actual metrics. So no, this is not just fluff information. We are actually getting shit done in your business on the call. You get group cheerleading sessions where we vanquish/tame whatever dragons are standing in the way between you and the marketing and sales that you want to bring you the kind of success, accolades, wealth, abundance, ease into your life that you're calling in. So whatever's standing in your way, be it strategic, tactical, or emotional, we will take care of it. If you'd prefer to work with me one-on-one, there is a VIP Squad option where you'll have all of the Squad perks plus a private text or email thread with me so I can give you all the support and hyping up you need to accelerate your results extra fast. You can also book a single one-on-one session with me. Look for the link for Pep Talk in a Pinch in the show notes. Or for my highest touch, most accelerated business growth offer, you can get me as your personal marketing confidence cheerleader for 12 one-on-one sessions and season of support. Links for everything are in the show notes.